So you've made it through the ancient sewers and you've reached the insufferable crypt. Sounds like a good time, am I right? My name is Kodiak, and in today's guide, I'll take you step by step through another Dead Cells boss, Conjunctivius. Suspended in the middle of the room awaits your next challenge, and like all good boss guides, the first thing you should do is look at the boss's abilities. Conjunctivius alternates between two phases. We'll start with the boss's primary phase. During the majority of the encounter, the boss will float around the room, tethered to both walls and the ceiling by large, non-damaging chains. Learning the boss's movement isn't an exact science, but after a few minutes, you start to get the hang of the fluid, yet random movement. The boss's most lethal ability is Charge. Conjunctivius projects a red beam indicating the direction at which it plans to charge. Players will have mere moments to parry or dodge the incoming burst of damage. Players caught in the path of the charge will take a sizable amount of damage. Conjunctivius will also occasionally shoot out poison from its eye. The poison is pretty consistently spaced, but does have some random movement. The poison will come out in waves depending on which phase of the fight you're in, so be prepared to dodge out of the way. After the second tentacle phase, the boss will occasionally deactivate the platforms in the room and fire out poison in rapid succession. While on the ground, you'll have to avoid as much of the incoming poison as possible. Finally, the boss will discharge a blast of electricity in a circle surrounding it. This will be telegraphed by a flash of light, moments before the damage occurs. Players will need to move out of range to avoid taking damage. The second phase of this encounter begins when the boss reaches 75%, 50%, and 25% HP. Players will be forced to fight on the floor and will be unable to damage Conjunctivius during this time. At 75%, tentacles will burrow underground and will follow players, erupting from beneath them. If a player is caught in their path, they will receive damage. At 50% and 25%, tentacles will also charge across the room, dealing damage on contact with the player. After all tentacles are destroyed, the boss changes back to its primary phase. So let's talk turkey. Killing Conjunctivius isn't very challenging if you're patient and prepared before entering the room. During my first encounter with the boss, I used my standard traps-based build and realized that it wasn't very effective. The boss moves along an X and Y axis, which makes projectiles largely inefficient when dealing with a moving target. That being said, status effects worked wonders against Conjunctivius. Leading up to the encounter, I made use of the blacksmith's assistant and reforged my gear to cause fire and poison damage to the boss. As the fight progressed, the boss's health continued to drop due to it taking constantly ticking damage from my damage over time abilities. This is also a decent fight if you're a fan of using shields. The boss's primary charge ability can be parried with a well-timed block. Having shields that apply bleed will also accomplish your goal of adding damage over time status effects to Conjunctivius. Shields can also be used to block incoming tentacle damage, but back on the ground, traps proved to be effective once again. My double crossbowmatic traps made short work of the tentacles as I dodged my way around the room. Grenades can also be an effective strategy for dealing with both phases. Anything with a long cooldown will be frustrating to use, especially if your aim isn't that great, but applying status effects to the boss will prove to be one of the most effective ways to kill Conjunctivius. Ultimately, this fight is a marathon, not a sprint. Trying to get up in the boss's face just to land an extra hit or two, which is a pretty common strategy for most of Dead Cells, will not work well on this encounter. Even with my limited turret approach, the boss is more about dodging its telegraphed abilities than trying to put out massive amounts of damage. If you have a strategy that you'd like to share about Conjunctivius, leave them in the comments section below. Keep in mind that not every strategy will work for every player. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, head on over to our Discord channel where we talk about the latest video game news, titles, and trends. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at the Game Gurus, thanks for watching, and play on.